In this video, we're going to be using Photoshop to create a series of textures to load into a physically based rendering engine, whether that is a game engine or whether that's a more traditional 3D rendering software package. And we're going to be doing all of that in Photoshop. And I'm here in Photoshop 2022, and I have open a single texture. I'm going to look at the resolution of that texture under the image menu with image size. And I see if I set my width and height to pixels, and that is also mirrored up here with dimensions, I'm dealing with a 2289 pixel wide image and a 1629 pixel high image. And anticipating the going into, let's say, a game engine that is going to be loading this image in dynamically, I'm going to change these settings to get to a power of 2 image or a power of 2 scale. So that could be 1024, that could be 2048. Notice as I change one of these values, the other is changing as long as my lock is enabled. And if I have resample enabled, it's going to scale the, it's going to, resample the image so it won't compress the pixels or expand the pixels, but it's going to kind of cache it into a new raster of that size. If I were to turn off resample, I can't adjust by pixels because without resample, these numbers are going to stay the same. So I can't add or increase or reduce the pixels until I turn on resample. So let me do that again. I'm going to go down in size, 2048. And now I have a challenge with my height. My height is somewhere between 2048 and 1024. A power of 2 image would be working a square version of the exact same coordinates or exact same raster dimension. So I have to choose, do I want to crop this image down? Do I want to, how do I best make use of the detail I have in this image? And if I scale it up, I could be introducing more resolution without necessarily getting more detail. And if I scale it down, I will be preserving my detail, but I will be losing some of the resolution. So I think I'm going to scale it down and actually make my height 1024. And I'm going to say, okay, even though my width is not yet at 1024. So that is going to compress the image down into a smaller raster. And then under image, I'm going to canvas size and setting these dimensions to pixels. And I am now going to crop my image by reducing my width. And because my anchor point is at the center, it is going to remove from both the left and the right. In fact, I'm preferring this right side of the image because it is generally brighter and more consistent in tone than the left side. So I'm going to switch my anchor to the right, and that means that all of the width I'll be losing will be coming in from the left-hand side. You can see this arrow pushing in from the left-hand side. So there we go. Let's zoom in. So this is our base image, and I'm going to duplicate my layer. I happen to have my layer palette turned on. I'm going to duplicate my layer. I'm going to call this my Albedo, or maybe I'd call it my Diffuse, depending upon the software I'm going to be going into. And this is going to be the initial texture map, my primary color map for this. And it would be appropriate if this were a, let's say, a non-metallic surface. However, if it's metallic, if the brightness that I'm seeing in this is coming from reflectivity, let's duplicate that and make an alternative albedo metal texture. And in this layer, the metal texture, I'm going to darken this because the metal version of this shader or this material would actually have a much lower, less intense albedo. It's going to be getting most of its characteristics through reflectivity and smoothness. So I'm going to make 2 different albedo or diffuse textures, one in case this is a metallic surface and one in case it isn't. So I'm going to image, adjustments, levels, and levels allows me to change overall the tone of the image. I have my black point down here, my white point to the right, and my gray point in the middle. So notice if I take my white point and I begin to slide it left, let's slide it all the way down to the middle of this histogram that gives me where my pixels are distributed in my original image. This means that all my pixels from the middle value and brighter are now going to be white. And you can see it clips out white. Tons of these pixels, half of them are going to white. And if I were to bring that back to my original image and instead pull up my black point, now the other half of the pixels that were on the darker side of my histogram are going to black. And if I were to change only my midpoint, I could make the image generally more on the bright side by saying the midpoint, instead of being here in the middle of the histogram, is actually closer to black. Or if I wanted to make it more black, I could pull this point up closer to white and say everything that was below this point in the histogram is going to go black. And I think that's what I want in this image. I'm going to say something maybe along those lines for my metal texture. So this would be for a non-metallic surface, this would be for a metallic surface. And in the next videos, we're going to make a metalness texture, we're going to make a normal texture, and make a roughness texture, all from the same texture file.